So here's something that's been sitting in the back of my mind for a while. Every year, smartphone cameras get better, more megapixels, bigger sensors, brighter night mode. And yet, if you have ever pulled out your phone, taken a portrait shot in mixed lighting, and thought, why does this still look like a phone photo? You're not imagining things. There's a fundamental limitation that no amount of computational photography has actually fixed. And it's not the sensor, it's not the software, it's the aperture. Every iPhone from the 14 Pro through the 17 Pro has shipped with a fixed aperture of f1.78. The lens is always fully open, always shooting at that aperture, always. No matter the lighting, no matter the scene, it doesn't adapt. And that's the thing Apple appears to be changing with the iPhone 18 Pro Max. What caught my attention wasn't just the feature itself, it was who tried this before and what happened. Back in 2018, Samsung's big new camera feature on the Galaxy S9 was the ability to change the physical aperture of the camera on the fly. It was genuinely clever. The Galaxy S9's version toggled between just two settings, f1.5 and f2.4. You couldn't pick anything in between. At first, that sounds minor, but conceptually, it was massive. A phone camera that could physically control how much light reached the sensor, like a real camera, and then Samsung killed it. Due to increased thickness and high price, Samsung dropped the feature in 2020. The feature faded away not because it failed, but because software brute force was cheaper, easier, and more marketable. Night mode, HDR stacking, AI sharpening, they all delivered visible results with fewer moving parts. So why bother with the physics? So that's where it gets interesting, because now, 8 years later, Apple is picking it up. And this time, the context around it is completely different. The news that the iPhone 18 camera lens will feature a variable aperture comes from trusted technology journalist Mark Gurman. In December 2024, Apple supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo was first to say that the main rear camera on both iPhone 18 Pro models will offer variable aperture. And a more recent report from October 2025 said Apple was moving ahead with plans and was discussing components with suppliers. So this isn't a rumor that popped up last week. Apple has reportedly been building toward this for over a year, and the supply chain tells the real story. LG Innotek and Foxconn will handle the main camera module, and Chinese manufacturers Luxshare ICT and Sunny Optical will provide actuator mechanisms. That's not exploring, that's production infrastructure. Now, here's the part that really changes the context. The variable aperture enables the camera to adjust the amount of light that gets to the sensor with the use of tiny blades. In dark environments, the aperture can be opened to receive more light, while in light environments, it can be closed to prevent overexposure. It also should provide users with greater control over depth of field. What this tells me is that Apple isn't just adding a spec line to a features page. They're going after the one thing computational photography has been faking for years: real optical depth control. Portrait mode on every iPhone currently simulates shallow depth of field with software. It's smart, it works, but it's never been truly optical. Variable aperture changes that at the hardware level. Now, I initially thought the 200 megapixel sensor rumors might steal the spotlight here. The article mentions it. iPhone 18 Pro Max camera rumors point to a variable aperture and a 200 megapixel main sensor. But when I dug into this, that claim gets complicated fast. According to Leaker Digital Chat Station, Apple's engineering tests for the iPhone 18 Pro continue to feature a 48 megapixel main camera paired with a variable aperture. The leaker pushed back on claims that a 200 megapixel sensor would ship. While Apple did evaluate 200 megapixel Samsung components during the material testing stage, the final hardware is expected to stick with a 48 megapixel setup. And researchers from Morgan Stanley say Apple will add Samsung's 200 megapixel cameras to the iPhone in 2028, and it will be the iPhone 21 that first gains a 200 megapixel camera. So the 200 megapixel sensor, it's real in the sense that Apple is looking at it, but it's not real in the sense that it's shipping this year. That doesn't look accidental. Apple's longstanding philosophy is to deliver reliable, high quality photography rather than chase headline numbers. And honestly, a refined 48 megapixel system can outperform a poorly optimized 200 megapixel sensor in most scenarios. Online discourse optimizes specs. Most people optimize for, does my photo look good when I send it to someone? Apple seems to be betting on the second group, but the camera isn't the only thing worth paying attention to here. The article describes the iPhone 18 Pro Max as running variable aperture technology, which automatically adjusts to different lighting conditions, paired with the A20 Pro chip built on advanced 2 nanometer technology. This next generation processor is expected to deliver significant improvements in efficiency, AI capabilities, and gaming performance. Battery life and performance are critical aspects of the iPhone 18 Pro Max, equipped with a 5,200 milliamp battery designed to support extended usage even during demanding activities such as gaming, streaming, or multitasking. At first, a battery number is just a battery number, but pair a larger battery with a 2 nanometer chip that's inherently more power efficient, and the compounding effect is where it starts to get meaningful. You're not just adding capacity, you're reducing demand at the same time. That's a smarter engineering play than just throwing in a bigger battery and calling it a day. Now, let's talk about what's happening at the front of the phone. Bloomberg reported on February 24th, 2026, that the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max will feature a noticeably smaller dynamic island. To shrink the dynamic island, Apple is reportedly moving the Face ID dot illuminator under the display while miniaturizing the front-facing camera. This is the part that sounds minor but isn't. The dynamic island has always been Apple's elegant workaround for a hardware limitation. We can't hide the sensors yet, so let's make them useful. Smart framing, great software integration, but it was still a compromise. The dynamic island has been refined to be smaller and less obtrusive thanks to the integration of under-display Face ID technology. This innovation, combined with a punch-hole selfie camera, creates a more immersive and uninterrupted viewing experience. The clearer pattern here is that Apple is gradually dismantling the dynamic island without removing it. They're shrinking it until eventually it likely disappears entirely, but they're doing it on their timeline, not the market's. The display itself boasts thinner bezels and higher peak brightness. And for anyone who values aesthetics, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reported that Apple is testing a deep red finish as the flagship color, described as a rich burgundy reminiscent of Opie's Big Apple Red. All right? I won't pretend a color is a feature, but I will say Apple knows that the first thing people see is the outside, and a bold, confident color choice signals a product generation that wants to stand apart visually. It's not nothing. Connectivity is one of those things nobody talks about until it doesn't work. But there's something genuinely worth noting here. The article describes real-time satellite communication, sometimes called 5G over satellite. That ensures reliable connectivity even in remote areas. Connectivity is a cornerstone of the iPhone 18 Pro Max, with several advancements that set it apart from its predecessors, and Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and Thread support are also expected via an upgraded wireless chip. But what's more interesting to me is what's happening under the hood. The iPhone 18 Pro Max could shift to Apple's new C2 modem used alongside its own N2 wireless chip, meaning Apple will control the whole stack. For users, this may mean better network and connectivity performance, faster network switching, better battery performance, and a more seamless experience. From a strategic standpoint, this is Apple doing what Apple does best, collapsing the supply chain into itself. When you own the chip, the modem, and the wireless controller, you can optimize at a level that no one using third party components can match. It's not flashy, but it's the kind of infrastructure move that compounds over years. Now, the foldable. Apple is rumored to unveil a foldable iPhone model, marking its entry into the foldable smartphone market. This premium device is expected to feature a crease-free internal display, providing a seamless visual experience. A dual battery system will ensure balanced power distribution, while integrated Touch ID will enhance security and convenience. I thought about this for a second. Apple entering the foldable market isn't surprising. The timing is. Samsung has had foldables since 2019. Huawei, Google, Motorola, they've all been iterating for years. Apple shows up in 2026 and promises a crease-free display. That's very on brand. Let everyone else define the category and absorb the complaints, then walk in with the version that solves the primary objection. The crease has been the number one criticism of foldable phones since day one. Whether they actually pull it off is a different question, but the positioning is deliberate. Despite its numerous upgrades, the iPhone 18 Pro Max is expected to maintain the same starting price as its predecessor, $1,199 for the Pro Max model. Analyst Ming-Chi Kuo said Apple's plan for the iPhone 18 Pro models is to avoid raising prices as much as possible. That's where it started to look different to me. Because think about what's in this phone. Variable aperture, a 20 Pro on 2 nanometer, larger battery, new modem, new wireless chip, smaller dynamic island, and potentially the same price. This likely isn't random. Morgan Stanley researchers expect Apple to absorb cost increases rather than raise prices, despite other component costs rising. That's a market retention strategy. You don't hold price flat when costs go up unless you're playing a longer game, keeping your upgrade base loyal while the competition raises prices. And here's the ripple effect that tells you the most. Samsung is reportedly planning to follow Apple in adding a variable aperture, seeing it as necessary to increase camera competitiveness, replacing software correction with physical hardware. ETNews reports that Samsung has requested the development of variable aperture technology from multiple camera module partners. Let that settle for a moment. Samsung invented this feature in 2018, dropped it by 2020, and now, according to multiple reports, Apple's expected move to add variable aperture to the iPhone 18 Pro may be pushing Samsung to revisit a feature it dropped in 2019. The camera landscape looks very different now. Huawei has been using variable aperture on phones like the Pura 80 Ultra with a range from f4.0 to f1.6. Xiaomi has also jumped in with stepless aperture control on recent flagships. So the tech has matured quite a bit since Samsung's first attempt. This is the thing people miss when they debate who did it first. Samsung did it first. That's a fact. But first and first to make it matter are different things. The technology in 2018 wasn't ready. The sensors were smaller, computational photography was cheaper, and consumers barely noticed the difference. In 2026, the physics have caught up with the ambition. The iPhone 18 Pro Max is an ideal choice for users with older iPhone models, particularly those 3 to 4 generations behind. Its advanced camera system, improved battery life, and next-level connectivity make it a compelling upgrade. For those who already own an iPhone 17 Pro, the decision to upgrade will depend on individual needs. Some users may choose to wait for future iterations, and honestly, that's the most grounded take. Gurman himself notes that the iPhone 18 Pro and 18 Pro Max represent minor tweaks from last year's iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max, with the variable aperture and a 20 chip being the key differentiators. So if you're on an iPhone 15 or older, this is likely a significant jump. If you're already on the 17 Pro, it's a question of how much the camera matters to you. Here's what I keep coming back to. The real story of the iPhone 18 Pro Max isn't a single feature. It's that Apple is now competing on physics again. For years, the smartphone camera wars have been fought almost entirely in software. Computational photography, AI enhancement, scene recognition. That approach hit diminishing returns. Everyone's night mode looks good. Everyone's HDR is fine. Variable aperture says, we're going back to the fundamentals. We're going to physically control light at the lens level, and then layer software on top of that. That's not a spec upgrade. That's a philosophical shift in how Apple builds cameras. And the fact that Samsung, the company that pioneered this exact idea and walked away from it, is now scrambling to bring it back because Apple announced it, that tells you everything about who sets the tempo in this industry. It was never about being first. It was about being ready. See you next one. Peace out.